Hi, it's Steve. Welcome back to my channel. If you're first time here, welcome back. If you're a first time visitor, welcome. And this is a topic that is always controversial. Let me just start off by saying we need to talk. And I think it's important that we do talk. I, like most people throughout my life, I've generally tried to do the right thing, but I've done many things that weren't right, and I knew it when I did them. I made a couple of videos about that we all know right from wrong. We choose whether we're going to do right or wrong, and then I guess at that time we should accept whatever the consequences may be. If we get caught, if we don't get caught, well, then there's that too. Do you eventually let the truth come out? Maybe when the time is a little different, who knows? Depends on the situation. But let's not get too far into the weeds on this. I think the main topic that I want to talk about, is abortion. And who wants to talk about abortion, right? However, it is something that happens frequently in the country, and I would just like to say a few things, and I'm sure anything surrounding abortion is controversial, but I just want to point a few things out that I believe to be true, and if I don't say them and things continue on a path towards a bad end, I'll feel like I haven't done anything to try to reverse that trajectory if I can. So let me just start with this. First of all, I know that every circumstance, everybody's life, everybody's relationship, the way they choose to conduct their life is up to them. I don't care. I have, women get pregnant from time to time. Girls get pregnant from time to time. Sometimes it's accidental, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's through being forced or coerced into having sex, sometimes it isn't. Hopefully, most of the time it's because there's a relationship and it's part of developing a relationship with somebody. Of course, ideally, I guess if we want to look at it this way, and nobody does this, well, hardly anybody, a few people out there probably, and maybe some really devout, practicing, God-fearing folk. But, I guess theoretically, if you were married first and then had kids, I guess it would be better to have that mother and father having built a relationship prior to having children, and then have a solid foundation from which to raise the children. I guess overall, I don't know how you could argue with that. It's a good concept. Of course, nowadays everybody wants to do their own thing. Unwed mothers are common. My mother raised 5 kids. My father left when I was 9 years old. I was the oldest of 5 kids. And he left my mother with 5 kids to raise. And no job, no money, no car, no nothing. We were poor when my father was there. He was the only breadwinner. He was basically a short order cook. So he didn't make a lot of money anyway. But, at least we had something. But then when he left, then my mother had no choice other than to do her best, which she did, and which I'll always give her the most credit for. How she did that on her own is tough. And that's in an era when people didn't accept, there was really not a lot of government help, and people were reluctant to accept charity or help from a lot of people. It was more of a pride and dignity kind of a thing. I'm not saying that people that accept help nowadays that's available to them shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying back in those days, first of all, there wasn't this kind of help, and people wouldn't do it anyway. People wouldn't accept that. Keep in mind that my mother was born at a time, it was shortly after the Great Depression. It was before World War II. She grew up during World War II. And, there was a time when people were forced to, how do you want to say it, conserve. They didn't have a lot, but they reused everything or used everything up to its maximum. And there was not a lot of waste, not like today. And it's a lifestyle that people got used to. And that's fine. Maybe that's what we should be doing more of. Trying to be more Oh, by the way, welcome to the jungle. This is my uh, one of my plant rooms that I like plants. So this one here is massaging the back of my head, I think. So anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. I was just trying to give a little background because I'm familiar with growing up and being raised by a single mom. And my mother made the conscious choice at some point to not really try to seek out another relationship until her kids were grown up to a certain level. And she told me that later on in life that she felt it would be better rather than trying to introduce another person into the household like that wasn't the father. She'd much rather tough it out and do it on her own. And she ended up meeting a great guy after we were all gone out of the house, and they got married. And he was a fantastic guy. She hit a home run on that one, and he did a lot for her and our family. And she ended up with a reasonably happy life, I suppose. Overall, I mean, as a parent of 5 kids, I mean, 5 kids. I'll tell you what, that's 5 different sets of problems you got to deal with every day, right? Although a lot of kids get out on their own and they're fine, but it seemed like our family has everybody's doing their own thing basically. So let's get on with the abortion issue. So I think that I would hope that anybody that was considering that gets pregnant and wasn't particularly prepared for that. First things first. After the fact, there's nothing to do about it. But before the fact, when you lay down with somebody and there's a potential that a baby can be created, I think you got to, try to be smart in your choices. I say this, and I really mean it, that I believe that women control that whole thing. I'm not trying to push blame on women. Somebody's got to be probably the one in charge. But I think that most men, if a woman says no, I think most men will respect that. They may be frustrated, they may not like it, but I think they'll respect it. And I believe that most men would expect to be at some point in a relationship that there'll be a sexual relationship that'll come from that. Now, a lot of times nowadays, I know if you frequent clubs, or if you're in an environment where there's a lot of men and boys and girls, or men and women that are around each other all the time, hey, things happen, right? But I think you need to use each person that gets involved in anybody has to use it. There's hormones involved. There's a natural instinct. We're here to make more humans. That's our job. Men are supposed to be making more humans, and so are ladies. It's our job to be as a species to keep the species going. So, with that said, I mean that's built in us, all of us, to have that drive to create and pass on our genetic material, if you will. So, with that, to go along with that point, I think that when you meet somebody and you're attracted to them, what's next? And people aren't waiting until they get married nowadays. Most people don't even get married, or they have a bunch of kids and get married later. Hey, whatever works. I'm not criticizing anybody. I understand. I'm in that group somewhere, quite honestly. So I didn't wait till I was married before I had sex. But anyway, you guys don't want to hear about my sex life. I'm positive of that. So I would like to think that should a pregnancy occur for however it happened, whatever the circumstances were, as a mother carrying a child. I looked up on Google the other day, when does human life begin? And there were quite a number of answers, but they were all quite similar. Human life begins when the male sperm fertilizes the female egg. That's when human life begins. Why is that? So I looked up more information, and everything that a person ever will be or what they will become is already there right at that moment. It's all there. The genetic code of the mother and the father combined. The sex is determined. Basically, a lot of the personality traits are determined. The size of the child, for the most part, unless there's other factors in that, things like environment and what they eat and a lot of other things. But typically, those things are all kind of predetermined. Eye color, even to some degree, I think you could say IQ. These things are all there. And of course, the way babies come out, what they look like. Most babies look a lot like either the mother or the father. It would depend. And, people look, sometimes it's like little, as they grow up, they look like little clones almost, As it's heartwarming to see that actually. So there's a case where you're passing along your genetic code. I would hope that, ladies, if you find yourself in a situation that you don't want, I would hope you could try to find alternatives other than an abortion. To me, to end that life is so, it's so, breaks my heart. That occurrence of that sperm, there's over an average, when men have sex, when they deposit their sperm, they can have over 1 billion sperm deposited in one time, over that in a lot of cases. And there's only one. There's only one that's going to make it to fertilize that egg, if it happens at all. 1 out of 1 billion, right? And of course, the mom provides the egg, and that's also a unique occurrence. Every egg contains the genetic material, but the combination of that 1 in 1 billion sperm, that's never going to happen again. If you terminate that life, people like to say it's a collection of cells. Yeah, so am I, and so are you. Everything's a collection of cells. That's what things are. Anything that has substance is basically a collection of atoms. A number of atoms get together and create a cell, and then their cells get together and create substance of some kind. Be that skin, fingernails, brain, hair, whatever the case may be. So, yeah, okay, it's a collection of cells, but if left to run its course, it's going to become a born baby, a toddler, a preschooler, go through school, get married, have other babies, right? So, but that argument just is the worst. Collection of cells is not a baby. It's not viable. Hey, there's people in their 40s that aren't viable. Does that mean you get to terminate them anywhere along the way because they're not viable? And then who's to judge what's viable and what isn't viable, right? So, that's just all baloney. It's just stuff to try to make sense of killing a child, which is what you're doing. And I want to tell you a quick story, and I don't know if I can get through it or not. Probably not. I'm already choked up. Sorry. Geez, I don't even know if I can do this. I thought it was a good idea when I started. I was involved with a lady at one time that she was married and had 2 kids, and I was married and had one son. And we were both married at the time. We were both unhappy in our marriages. We both had were in the process, if you will, of ending the marriage and moving on. Neither one of us had left the home yet. I was still living with my wife, and she was still living with her husband. And we met and we hit it off right away. And one thing leads to another, and next thing you know, you can't get us apart, right? We're with each other every time we can get a chance to be with each other. And eventually, of course, we weren't real careful about things, like most people aren't, I suppose. And a pregnancy occurred, and the two of us tried to come to an agreement on what should be done. It was terribly inconvenient at that time. It was embarrassing too, and there were a lot of other factors I won't get into why it was even worse than that. But in any case, it would have been a extremely difficult and uncomfortable situation to bring the baby into the world. However, I felt a whole bunch of things, like most people do. I felt that I didn't want to terminate the pregnancy, but I also realized it's really not my call. I'm part of the equation, but actually the woman has to do all the work, carrying the baby, going through the pain of delivery, and then typically if the man doesn't stick around, the woman's stuck with the baby, right? if you consider it stuck with the baby, I consider it for most cases to be a blessing. It's the greatest thing you can do and be a part of, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Most people would probably agree at some point, but we weren't going to agree. She didn't really have strong feelings it should be terminated, but the situation was such that it was going to be too hard probably to work out. So, the decision was made to get an abortion, and it's the worst. It's the worst thing to go through, and I eventually agreed that that was what would happen. I basically told her that, it's apparent we're not going to be able to come to a joint agreement. Maybe not quite. That sounds kind of like a lawyer. It wasn't really in those terms. You can imagine we were crying, holding each other, and all that. And I said, I don't want to put it on you, but basically you got to do all the work of carrying it if you decide to go and have the baby. So I'm going to have to, whatever you decide, I'll support, which I did. And I've regretted that. Still today. Sorry. Cry baby. As I've gotten older, it's I might have to stop and come back. I don't know, maybe I'm getting better now. As I've gotten older, I realized that the moment the sperm meets the egg, that is a unique, complete person that's never going to happen again, just like that. It can't. It's impossible. The universe is essentially organized chaos. Every atom is a little bit different. And it takes a lot of atoms, trillions of atoms, to make a human being. But every one is a little bit different. They're similar, but they're a little bit different. When they combine, all those differences have to work together somehow to create something. And so the point of that is, I know it's a little bit scientific, I guess, but you're not going to get the same combination of things ever again. I don't know if anything's really impossible, but that's pretty close. I pointed out in a different video that I looked up on the internet, that the Oracle, right, the place to find all information, and they estimate there's about 65 octillion atoms in a 150-pound person.